Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And Dianne and I just spent 40 minutes messing with my microphone, and it's not working. And we decided to go ahead and record this episode anyway, because it's going to be a lot of Dianne. And I'm going to we're going to do our best. And I apologize that it doesn't have our normal high quality audio on my end. But today's episode is brought to you by Kobu Organic 100% Natural Breast Pumping Spray.
Yes.
You could spray right into your pump and it will lubricate it and make the dread of your pumping session go away because it'll be more comfortable. And we will hear more from our sponsor later. But you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page if you ever need anything. See if you can give them any of your business. While you're there, scroll down and enter your email address, and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are still hoping that you will join us at Patreon because we have all kinds of fun things going on there. And you can find the link to the various tiers at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, but also over at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. And we are still hosting our ongoing giveaway. For anyone who leaves reviews around the internet, you can write reviews like you do on iTunes, or you can leave stars like you do on Spotify. Any app that allows you to leave reviews, go ahead and do it. And send a screenshot along with your address to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll send you a goodie bag of podcast stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And you can spread the word around the world. I put stickers everywhere.
I just got new ones. I got new sparkly ones.
I got new ones too, and I'm not going to tell anybody what they are, and I'm going to debut them at the, well, this was recorded before Indianapolis, but I'm going to debut them in Indianapolis. So by the time you're hearing this, they will be public. And if you send us your review, we'll send you all the exciting stickers, including Dianne's sparkly ones.
Yes, my sparkly ones.
Yeah, and Dianne has our review of the week.
Yeah, let me pull it up. It says, these ladies are the best. When I was very pregnant and anxious about breastfeeding not going well, I discovered this podcast by fate and started listening nonstop. Dianne and Abby gave me the confidence I needed to get off to a good start with breastfeeding. My baby is now 1 month, and we are both still learning new skills every day. Our breastfeeding journey is off to an amazing start. I will be going back to work as needed when maternity leave is over and was nervous about alternating between breast and bottle. These ladies help me know exactly what to do. My baby is doing a great job going back and forth, 1 bottle a day with my husband and the rest of the feedings by breast. Anytime I have a new question or concern pop up, I search for it in your podcast archives. And if for some reason I can't find it there, you've covered just about everything. I know I can ask the lactation consultants at our breastfeeding clinic. Thank you again for what you do, Abby and Dianne. This is awesome. I love it when people listen when they're pregnant. And I know we say that all the time, but it is important. If you're listening when you're pregnant, you are getting a lot of information that you need to get started on your breastfeeding journey. And that is fantastic because information is everything, right? Like you need to have it.
Yeah. And if you happen to look through our archives and you can't find an answer to your question, please send us an email so that we can do an episode on it, because we're always looking for episode ideas at this point, having done almost 400 of them. So you can just send an email to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com and just say that you couldn't find an answer to it. Now, I do realize that there's a couple of requests that we had that I still have on our list, but that, we're still kind of trying to figure out how to make a whole episode around. But generally, people that request episodes, we just do an episode on that.
Yeah. We like to try to get it in if we can, because if you have a question about it, somebody else has a question about it too.
Totally. Somebody absolutely has a question about it, because that's the thing about this is we think that we're going through this alone and that we are experiencing, something unique. And while you are unique and your baby is one of a kind, your problems are not unique.
Somebody else is going through the same thing. So we definitely, we want to make sure that everybody's got the information they need to be successful and get your questions answered and all of that stuff. So reach out if you don't see an episode that don't see something on an episode, or maybe you just missed it. We've had people that emailed us and said, do you have an episode on A, B, and C? And we did, but maybe it was, a long time ago. We can always redo that episode, or we can lead you in the right direction of where to find that episode or link you to it or something like that. Maybe if you just haven't found it.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God.
Abby's having issues today.
I'm having so many issues today.
Yes. Abby's having lots of issues over there.
Oh my God. Okay. We're going to talk about latch regression. So tell us what that is.
Yeah. So this came up actually at our last Babies and Bumps, which was in Detroit. I think that's where this came up.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a seminar at Babies and Bumps in Detroit. And when I was doing the seminar, somebody asked about this and she called it latch regression. And so we kind of coined that term, latch regression, as we're going along here. Because I don't know if, you might be listening going, what the hell is latch regression? But this is what happens when your baby was latching fine, and then all of a sudden they're not latching fine anymore. And it's like, what the heck? What the hell just happened? My baby was doing great. Breastfeeding was going great. Then all of a sudden it started to hurt again. Not that they're not latching at all, because that would be a nursing strike, which we have episodes on. Nursing strike is when babies just stop latching altogether and they're just kind of going through something developmental, or maybe they're having pain with teething or something like that. Latch regression could be when your baby you're kind of going along with breastfeeding. Everything is going fine. And then all of a sudden they're just not latching well anymore. And the person in Detroit, I think her baby was about 6 weeks old. So she had gone through that original, struggling to kind of get, figure out their latching. And they had a couple of weeks where everything was going really great. And then all of a sudden the pain started. And she started having pain with breastfeeding then after several weeks of no pain at all. So we determined that her baby was going through a latch regression. And this maybe can happen. I've seen this happen, earlier. Like this person was, like I said, this baby was around 6 weeks old. I've seen it happen then. I've seen it happen when babies are a little bit older, having the parent having pain again. Yeah, we seem to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm perking up over here. Having breastfed toddlers and small children, they get bigger. Their mouths get bigger. They get teeth. Their mouths change, and they don't know how to latch anymore. So it's like you have to teach them all over again.
You have to constantly be reteaching. One of the things that happens when they're older too, and I mean, really, not even just when they're older, kind of all through the process, they're growing at such an incredible rate, and everything is growing and everything is moving and shifting. And, it just, you just have to kind of keep up with it and keep continually being on that latch and making sure okay, are we in the right position? Is this working for us? What is happening with my baby? Now, sometimes what happens is they can be, those muscles, especially if this is early on, those muscles can be really tight. So if the muscles are really tight, maybe they are not opening very wide. They might have been opening wide for you, but now maybe those jaw muscles and stuff are very tight. I remember one time going to see a parent at a home visit, and this was years ago, and she had been having some pain with breastfeeding. And she brought her baby to an infant chiropractor, and we'll talk about that because that is one of the cool things that you can do. But she had brought her baby to an infant chiropractor, and she goes, oh, yeah, the baby's jaw was out of alignment. It's how does that even happen? Right?
Birth.
But they're growing. Birth.
Birth can put all kinds of trauma on the body.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be out of alignment. It can be, their jaw muscles can be really tight. It can just happen with growth. There's so much stuff going on with your baby that sometimes it's going to come in. You might not notice it until you go to latch them. And that latch is now all of a sudden painful again. And then you're going, oh my God, I thought we were past this. And now all of a sudden it hurts again. You do see this a lot, not a lot, but you do see this more, I feel like, when babies are a little bit older and they're starting to get teeth, just because, their jaws are really growing to accommodate the teeth and everything too. So, and they're teething, it just becomes a little bit more painful. I know we've talked about biting, but this is different than biting, and a lot of times even just the teeth can just kind of rub a little bit on you and they're not trying to bite, but because the teeth are kind of halfway in, I'm going like this, like that's going to really like they're snaggly teeth or something like that, but they're kind of like halfway in. They're starting to come up and they're like rubbing on the breast itself. And that can be pretty painful, but it's not biting. They're not biting you. Right. It's just that, that rubbing of their teeth. Happens
because when they have a proper deep latch, their teeth aren't present in the situation, right?
Right.
So that's what happens is they start to get older, but they're still used to just kind of having this little suck. They kind of have this muscle memory of this suck that they have. And as they get older, they have to readjust. They have to open wider. They have to just like relearn, like we're saying, to get a deeper latch, because there is nothing more horrible, even if it's not pain, than like a shallow latch of a toddler. It makes me want to smack my head through a wall just thinking about it. Like, it's awful. It is terrible. It's like, that's just like nursing aversion. Even if you're not struggling with that, like that feeling, and you're like, they got to get a deeper latch in there. They're going to fit more of your areola and your nipple in their mouth. But when they do, it won't be as uncomfortable.
Right.
We're not supposed to just be latched to the little tip.
No, not at all. No, it's terrible. And we don't want that for you. So what you end up having to do is we have to go back to the basics of a latch. Right. And sometimes you have to go into like switching around positions and trying different positions again to see like what is going to work, because sometimes we just need that switching of positions. And that is going to help a lot. So let's go through positions really quickly, and we'll kind of get that down so that we are making sure that we are positioning our baby right. So you should be, and it's different, right? When you've got an older baby, because we tend to kind of just like slap them wherever they go, right? Like they just kind of like go on there. And the other thing, when your baby gets to be a little bit older too, we're not paying as much attention to what we're doing. We're just kind of like putting them on there and dealing with it. Not like when they're a newer baby and we're really paying attention to what's going on with that latch. So what we want to do, especially if your baby is younger and you're noticing that latch is getting painful again, we want to be sure that the baby is being held nose to nipple, that you're really giving your baby good support, because if they start to slide back off the breast, because you're not supporting their head and their neck and their shoulders, if they're starting to slide back off the breast, it's going to bring you a more shallow latch. And sometimes this can happen even just at night, right? Because you're tired and it's just you're not paying attention to what's going on, and your baby ended up being more shallow. That is enough to cause pain for the next feeding. So we want to be sure that the baby is on deep all the time. You really have to be really diligent about that. Making sure that your baby is on, they're positioned well, they're opening really wide. So we want them to have that nose to nipple latch so they're opening a lot wider and they can get on a lot deeper. And you might have to support the weight of your breast for your baby too, because if your breast is heavy and bigger and full of milk, they might not be able to support the weight of that breast. So they're going to slide back off the breast too, if you're not supporting the weight of it. So you might actually have to hold your breast for your baby in the beginning before they have really good head and neck control and they can actually support the weight on their own. So definitely try some of those things if that's what's going on with your baby. We should probably take a break, actually. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about other things that you can do.
We'll be right back.
We're going to talk about pump spray. Everybody wants
pump
this.
Spray. Did you even know that was a thing? Because if you didn't, I'm going to tell you about it.
It's going to be a lifesaver.
Right. Pumping can be more comfortable and you don't have to dread it as many of us do. Say goodbye to the dread that the time to pump brings on and turn it into a little mom vacay with Kobu's organic 100% natural breast pumping spray. Just one quick spray on each flange perfectly lubricates so your tender tatas can glide while you pump. No more tugging, no more friction, no chafing, just pumping bliss. Developed by pumping moms in 2017 who are pumping for their own NICU babies and knew pumping could be better. Use code BADASS for 15% off of your order of the Kobu Natural Breast Pumping Spray on their website, kobumom.com. That's COBOOMOM.com. And make sure to check out their other amazing lactation products. So code BADASS, 15% off, 100% natural breast pumping spray by Kobu. And all of our sponsors can be found at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. And you can find over there, you'll find all of our other episodes, our resources page, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yes. And I have the ability to take more insurances now. So reach out. I can get you lined up with finding out if your insurance is going to be accepted. And if it's accepted, you can do a consultation for free, which is amazing. Obviously, since it would be a telehealth visit, which we can do a lot through telehealth. United Healthcare is the only one that is not covering telehealth right now. So if you have United, just know that you're not going to be approved for telehealth because they're just not doing telehealth. Any other insurance, if you have any other insurance, reach out to me. We can see if you'll be covered because then you can get your lactation consultation covered for free, which would be amazing.
And if you really are in need of a lactation consultation, you can have Dianne without the insurance for $90 a session, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know $90 is not a small amount of money, but it's cheaper than formula. It's cheaper than, your doctor who's going to tell you all the wrong things. And I mean, do you see people multiple times or is it usually like that one session and you really kind of get going?
Usually it's one session. I mean, if we can get your insurance covered, they cover more than one session, which is amazing. So sometimes it is nice to know that we have other sessions that we can do that are covered. But typically we can cover in one. If you're paying out of pocket, we can typically do what we need to do in one session. A lot of it depends on the problem that you're having, but a lot of it can be done in one session.
I think that everybody listening right now should just reach out, see if their insurance will cover it. Even if you're not having massive problems, you can talk about what your goals are, like, maybe problems you've run into in the past, ways to like avoid problems in the future, what to expect maybe as you're coming upon a year or 2 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be like up Schitt's Creek to call a lactation consultant.
Right. And a lot of the people that have done consults with me through the podcast has been like, okay, I'm starting solids. What should I do? I need to go on a work trip. I'm not sure how to make that happen. I'm starting to pump. What do I need to do for that? Like, there's just questions, right? You always have questions. And if your insurance covers it,
just do it. It's free.
Right.
You pay for that insurance. We pay for insurance. Try to take advantage of it, especially with lactation, because it's so unusual for it to be covered.
I know. So definitely reach out so that we can get you hooked up.
And all they have to do is send you an email, right? Can they say?
Yeah, just send me an email.
Mm-hmm. And you can send it to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com or Dianne
Cassidy, ibclc@gmail.com. Yep. Either one, or just go right to my website and you can email me that way. You'll find all my information there. You can always text me. My phone number's on my website. You can at Dianne Cassidy Consulting. So you can you'll find me. You can't not find me. Always get me through the podcast. So definitely do it. Do it. So one of the things that I was thinking as you were doing our ad for our new sponsor is that I have had people that have reached out with a painful latch, and we have absolutely determined that it was pumping. It wasn't the actual baby itself. So sometimes we do think that we're having a latch problem, but it's actually a pumping problem. And things like the Kobu spray can really help if you are struggling with comfort with pumping, because pumping can feel uncomfortable at first. So some of the things you want to definitely watch out for are flanges that are too small or too big. You want your flanges to be the right size. And you want to make sure that you're not turning your pump volume and speed up too high, because that will cause nipple damage and discomfort and, all of that. And especially if you're pumping multiple times a day with the wrong size flange or with your speed up too high, you are definitely going to cause some nipple pain. And then you go to latch your baby and it's painful. And it's like, okay, so which is it? Is it the baby? Is it the pumping? What are we doing here? So we want to make sure if you are having pain with your latch, if you're having pain with feeds and you're somebody who pumps several times a day, we want to make sure we're looking at that too, so that we want to be solving the problem is what I want to say. Like, we want to be solving the problem. And if we're only looking at one thing, then that might not solve the problem. We want to look at everything. So make sure that you are checking out your pump, that you're checking out to make sure your flange sizes fit right. Because as your baby gets bigger and breastfeeding has gone on for several months, you might have to change flange sizes again, because your breasts change. So you might determine that you need, you were using, say, size 20, and now all of a sudden you need a 17. It just really can change that quickly. So make sure that you're using the right sizes. So some of the other things that you can do. So sometimes these little babies, like we were saying, they have like really tight muscles, and that can just be from birth. It can be, their growth, things shifting. So one of the things you can do, I know you can't see me, but anybody who's watching on YouTube, you can actually see us. You can do little jaw massages for your baby before they're feeding, after they're feeding. And that can help a lot, just like right up at where they're like their jaw up there by the ear.
Massages there sometimes.
Yeah. It feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Plus I'm always clenching my jaw.
Oh yeah. I know, me too. I do that a lot.
Tension.
Yep. So that can really help a lot. It'll help them to open up a little bit wider and help to loosen things up for them a little bit. So you can do something like that to help them. Like we said, changing position. So if you've got your baby, if you're typically feeding your baby like in a cradle position, maybe move them to a cross cradle position, or move them, if they're still really little, move them to a football position, or lay down with them. That might be something that you can do to change it up a little bit and see if that works a little bit better. Or reclined, if you can do that, recline back and more like that laid back position, because your babies typically tend to open a little bit wider, and if you're going into that laid back position. So you can try one of those positions with your baby as well.
Any chance you have to lay down, take it.
just nap. Just lay down and nap. Everybody.
Everybody should nap when they can.
Naps are great, right? Oh my God.
We don't allow, there's like cultures where like napping is completely normal. like you just close your eyes for a few minutes during the day. I think like, I feel like I heard that like President Clinton would take a nap every day, which just so tracks with like his personality.
Yeah, it does.
Like,
it really does.
A nap. But like, yeah, there's some cultures where napping is just like, they don't have this like 40-hour work week and you're supposed to sleep this block of 8 hours at night. Like you kind of sleep. Our ancestors too weren't sleeping 8 hours a night and working all day. There were like shifts. People had to stay awake and make sure that there weren't, saber-toothed tigers going to eat you or whatever.
I know. God, who wants that? Nobody wants that. So nap. Lay down with your baby. Get that feeding in, nap. So changing positions could be really helpful. It could be, and that's one thing that you can kind of recognize if you're doing a little bit of troubleshooting. If you're feeding your baby, say, on the right breast in cross cradle, and it hurts, and you put them in football hold instead, and it doesn't hurt, that tells us that that there's some asymmetry on one side of your baby's body. So you want to troubleshoot these things and see if we can determine, like, especially if you're somebody who kind of gets into, and this is what I did. I don't know if Abby was the same way, but I kind of got into feeding my baby into one position, and we just stayed in that position. We never got out of that position.
Yeah.
And that's fine to do unless you're having pain. Then you want to switch them around to see, like, okay, what is causing this pain? And if we can make it so it's not painful in a different position, then we have to kind of determine, okay, is there some asymmetry happening there? Infant chiropractors and bodywork can be really, really helpful. And when we say bodywork, we're talking like physical therapists, infant chiropractors, craniosacral therapists, those kinds of things. And they can be really helpful because babies go through a lot at birth. There's just a lot, like they're being pulled out of a very small space. Sometimes it's like, if there's a vacuum or there's forceps, that's going to like cause some, pain for them. It could cause some, I don't want to say nerve damage is a very like drastically sounding side effect to. It sounds permanent, but it's not many of the times. But there can be some, some temporary, nerve, I hate to even say nerve damage, but it can really cause some nerve tightness in the nerves, tightness in your baby's face, tightness in their jaw, all of that stuff. So it really can be helpful to see somebody who specializes in all of this stuff and knows the exercises and the stretches that will be helpful for your baby. A couple of things that you can do at home. Tummy time can be really helpful because it helps to stretch out those muscles too, as your baby is like lifting their head and lifting their neck around and moving their body. That can be really helpful. And maybe you're somebody who's like, well, I don't do tummy time. My baby's still really little. I haven't done tummy time yet. But if you put your baby on your chest and they're still like pushing up and looking around, that counts as tummy time. You can do that with your baby, and that will also help with those muscles, help to kind of like stretch those muscles out a lot. We were saying the massaging can be really helpful. Massaging their jaw, massaging their neck for them. That can be really helpful. If you're looking for very specific massaging, you always YouTube like baby massage, and you can find some really cool stuff to do
really
for that.
Popular thing these days.
Yeah, I think so.
I had a friend too who was having some issues with breastfeeding. And I think it was probably more of like a tongue tie situation, kind of a mild tongue tie situation. But one of the things that somebody had told her, I don't remember, a male lactation consultant or something told her that you can try to have the baby like stick out their tongue, which can kind of stretch things out. And so you can kind of stick your own tongue out at your baby and try to train them to stick their tongue out and kind of get things moving and stretching.
Yeah, because they mimic you.
Yeah.
So right. if you're just like sticking your tongue out to them, they're going to mimic it back to you. And it's kind of fun,
Yeah,
it's like fun little thing to
mouth
do.
moving and
Get things going, get things stretched out. Continue to put your baby in different positions for feeds. That's going to help you a little bit to kind of alleviate some of that pain. But the biggest thing is going to be if we kind of determine, okay, there's some tightness here. There's some tightness in your baby's jaw. They're not opening wide. You notice that latch has become really narrow and shallow, because if we're not addressing these situations, those muscles become tighter. So that's why we get that regression of latch. Like, oh, okay, we were doing fine. And now all of a sudden over the last few days, things have gotten even harder. Things have gotten worse. Things have gotten more uncomfortable. That could be those muscles just getting a little bit tighter as you go along. You also want to make sure the muscles in their neck are not getting tighter. A situation, something like torticollis, where they're really like, you've got a lot of tightness on one side of their neck, and that can impact their jaw. It can impact how they feed. It can impact how their muscles are moving. So those babies sometimes struggle they start out latching fine, and then they struggle after, a few weeks to keep that going, because those muscles become so tight that it's hard for them to do that. So those kind of situations are definitely like physical therapy and things like that, because we want to make sure that those muscles aren't staying tight. And that could be a situation where you see your baby really holding their head more to one side than another. That is just, sometimes that kind of just have been positional from birth, from where they were in the womb. And then they're born, and you might not have noticed it right away. And then it becomes a little bit more drastic, and they're only holding their head, say, to the right side. And that becomes very, very, it's starting to become a problem, because then their head becomes flatter on one side. Feedings become more painful. It's harder for them to transfer milk. We want to make sure that we're, doing what we can for these babies that are struggling with things like, positional stiffness and muscle tightness. But yeah.
That's great. So the thing to know is that it's not just like over. Your baby's not just like, oh, I'm not into this anymore. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm just not built for breastfeeding. Like, that's not a thing. It's just a process. It evolves into so many different things, and your baby is constantly growing. And there's things that you can do if you have the information about what to do and what the problem is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you're doing the troubleshooting. Try different positions, see if that helps. Try doing some manual massaging with your baby, see if that helps. Look at the pump, make sure it's not that. If you're somebody that's pumping regularly, make sure that that's not the issue, and that we're just not blaming our baby when it's actually the pump that's doing it. But there's lots of ways to kind of determine like what is going on. And you can get back to that pain-free breastfeeding again. We just have to do a little troubleshooting and figure out what's causing it. But sometimes the moral of the story is, times when you think you're out of the woods, you end up back in the woods again. Like, it's just, and that can feel really frustrating, especially if you were kind of like, for the first couple of weeks, really working hard to get this breastfeeding going. And you finally hit this road where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm pain-free. The baby's feeding really great. And then all of a sudden you hit another roadblock, and that can feel really frustrating. But it's just the way sometimes breastfeeding evolves. It's just ebbs and flows,
Yep.
But as long as we're staying on top of it, we'll get you fixed. Well, that's it.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.